Hey, this is Brian.
And Shelby.
And you're listening to the Hyperspace
PodBlast. Aren't you a little short for a podcast?
Huh?
Hello, friends and neighbors. Welcome into the Hyperspace PodBlast.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, see, I'm trying to keep it
down.
Very nice. I'm trying to keep it fresh and different.
Well, I mean, you had a lot of really terrible British accents for a long time.
Yeah, I kind of got into a groove.
A little rut.
Whatever. In case you didn't notice, there's another voice with us today, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Brandon Boylan from ClashingSabers.net, HolonetPodcast, and now a guest on Hyperspace PodBlast. I'm excited to be here.
There you go. Yeah, happy to have you. And today we were talking about Star Wars in the classroom, I guess. I titled this episode, Can You Use Star Wars to Teach? So that's what we're gonna go with. So the first generic question we have here is, do you think Star Wars is appropriate for the classroom, and why or why not?
I think it is. I think it's like anything you use for teaching, it's about knowing your audience. So, Brian, you teach at the high school level, so you can take it to a completely different level than I can teaching at elementary. I teach fourth in the past 3 years, and I'm teaching fifth grade this year. So, it's knowing your audience. You're going to be looking at a high school level more, I imagine, historical connections, going deeper into the mythology, where I'm going to be looking at it as more of a baseline of the Battle of Good and Evil, helping my students with personal development, learning how to handle their emotions. There's just so many angles that you can take with Star Wars that if you angle it properly and you use the right aspects of the story, you can definitely use it to teach. I think it's one of the, if not the strongest tool to use in the classroom because it is so universal and overarching like that, and there's so many ways that people can connect with it.
Yeah, I agree. I like the fact that it's accessible for a lot of students. I mean, not everyone's seen Star Wars. Believe it or not, I know it's hard for people like us to think outside that box.
Oh, I can think.
Yeah, well, yeah, Shelby's a Star Wars newbie, so you can imagine yourself sitting in a high school class and your teacher starts relating the Odyssey, which is what I do, to Star Wars, like the hero's journey and all that kind of stuff, and you just start tuning out, I'm sure.
If you're using it to teach, though, I think you got to make sure that our students are an audience at the end of the day. Like, they're an audience, so you're making sure your students know the references and things like that. Like, for example, when I'm teaching Plot Mountain and the rising and falling action, stuff like that, I read the kids the golden books of Star Wars. That way they have an overarching look at the whole saga. I'm not talking to them about the Kessel Run, you know what I mean? So
right, yeah, you're not making vague references and stuff,
yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I do that, and five students in my class appreciate it, but
I do. I just try to do it in funny voices so that way the kids are at least entertained.
Yeah, they laugh whether they know they should or not.
Exactly. They pretty much just assume they should laugh at me anytime I talk. They're laughing, which I don't.
Yeah, I kind of get that too with the faculty and staff as well, actually, but.
No one knows how to handle you, Brian.
That's a whole different animal.
Hey, I'm the one dancing down the hallways and singing to myself, and I usually have Star Wars music going in my back pocket, so people learn just to, that's Boylan. Just go with it.
Nice. So you said briefly there that you use the golden books to teach Plot Mountain and stuff. How are some other ways that you bring Star Wars and connect it to curriculum?
Well, the big one, because for the TEKS that we have to do, the TEKS are the Texas standards. I think you guys are on Common Core, but for the Texas standards, Plot Mountain is in understanding storytelling is a big feature, especially I work in lower end districts, so kids don't have a lot of exposure to good storytelling and being able to really take the time to understand a story. So I use Plot Mountain a lot as the baseline for a lot of things, but I also do character development, interactions, looking at deeper levels, especially if you look at Anakin Skywalker, which Anakin gets such a bad rap, but I've just fallen more and more in love with Anakin the more I teach, because there are so many layers to the onion of his life, and it really is interesting to see how his character develops and to use that to teach. Or I've used Star Wars Rebels a lot. It's actually been like a major basis for a lot that I've taught, because it came out the same time that I started teaching. So we kind of were just like, it happened to be, a happy coincidence that it started raining and a lot, and we were having a lot of indoor recesses, and the kids were tired of PBS Kids, and I'm like, I got you. We had an Apple TV in the classroom, and I had it on iTunes, and I was like, you know what? Let's go for it. It's Youth TV 7. I can't get in trouble for this. And so we started watching it, and the kids really connected with it. So I've used that a lot because, throughout the year I can kind of use it to show them character development, things like that. There's really anything within literature I think you can use to teach. To use Star Wars to teach, and then you can also go over into history, and I've used it to teach about Nazi Germany and propaganda, and the reason, even social and emotional development, and the reason why you need to share your feelings and talk to people and trust your mentors, but also to challenge what you hear and to always question things like Luke did, to learn from your mistakes when those questions are not answered the way that you expect them to be answered. There's so many angles that you can use Star Wars to help kids develop emotionally and in learning.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up about the mentorship thing, because again, going back to your beloved, I guess, Anakin and his many oniony layers, he has that sort of dual mentorship, like pulling him in different directions with the Palpatine on one end, and I guess the Jedi in general, but more Obi-Wan and the Council on the other.
Well, it's interesting. I'm reading I'm planning the read-alouds that we do for this next year, and I'm going to be reading the actual junior novels also for the entire saga to my kids, because they're 5th grade, so they're a little bit higher than where I've been before. And it's interesting reading these because it really shows the tear that Anakin feels inside. There's a lot, if you read the Revenge of the Sith novel, is what I'm working through right now, where he's questioning, why are the Jedi and Palpatine even at odds? We're all on the same side. Shouldn't we be working together? But he never voices those questions to anybody. And even Obi-Wan senses that something's wrong, but he never takes that step to talk about it. And I think that's something, especially I work in areas where talking about your feelings is not cool, especially for the guys. It's like, oh, no, you got to be tough and things like that. And to teach my boys, like, hey, talk about it. What's up? Talk to me. Talk to somebody, because it can really help with so much. Mental health is such a big issue in our world today. And I personally have dealt with mental health issues my whole life. And it's when I've talked about it with the people I look up to, my Jedi masters, for lack of a better term, that I've been able to develop better and become a better person and pour into other people. And in a time when everything is about numbers and what did you score on this test, it's important to remind the kids that that's what's going to make you successful, is being a good person.
Yeah. It's so funny. You talk about a lot of this stuff of how you would connect Star Wars to your classroom. But the first thing that I think of whenever I look at this question is, oh, wow, think of all the different scientific things that you can basically propose whenever you put stuff in the Star Wars universe. And you can have students really understand a concept much better if you say, okay, this is how it works here on Earth. This is the physics here. Now put it on Tatooine. Now put it on a Star Destroyer. What would happen? What would happen if the airlock was open, or that sort of thing?
Yeah, and I mean, there's just so many angles that you can take with it, and you can mix it into math, you can mix it into history, you can mix it into science. And again, it's about getting kids to question and to think critically. And I think that's the thing that makes Star Wars so great, is in any content area, you can get them to think critically by using this thing that engages them. A lot of the stuff that's out there is just, it's written by people who have not been in the classroom in ages, who don't really understand the kids of this generation and have no interest in understanding the kids of this generation. And I might not be watching all the same shows that they are or doing the same things that they're doing, but I'm at least keeping a finger to the pulse of it and trying to relate it to that, which makes it really nice when that pulse is beating Star Wars, because, and I'm like, yeah, it's about, engaging them. And it's one thing, Brian, you're in high school, so you can kind of I don't know, guilt trip them is not the word that I'm looking for, but I guess I would imagine.
You can kind of do that, though.
Yeah, but I would imagine high school kids kind of have their eyes a little more set on the quote-unquote real world. But it's hard.
It's more of an immediate future than in the elementary school.
It's a lot harder in elementary school to make them realize, like, what you're learning now is setting the foundation for what you're going to do for your entire future. And so when you can use that lens of something that they love and something that they care about, and it's not Star Wars for everybody. Like, you know, just like in the real world, Star Wars is not for everybody. Well, it is for everybody, but not everybody likes Star Wars.
Yeah, I was going to say, oh my gosh.
Choosing my words a little wise. But it's for everybody, but it's, you know, not everybody loves it. And there are kids every year who are like, oh my God, more Star Wars. But, you know, again, I go to them and I find what connects with them. And that's the big lesson is finding your place in the galaxy. That's a big thing in Star Wars is finding your place in the galaxy, you know? Han thinks he's supposed to be this roguish smuggler because it's what he's always done. But we can't be sticking in that what we've always done just because it's the way we've always done it.
Yeah, and I mean, geez, that's a good way to put the way a lot of education is done.
Yeah.
You know, like there's, especially in ELA, which is my forte, kids are reading the exact same books I read, and most of the exact same books my parents read, which, you know, that's not terrible because these are good books. You know,
there's a reason.
Yeah, they call them text exemplars, but you don't have to read those specific books to teach the standards that they're trying to get across.
Well, and I use, I mean, I have tons of kids reading comic books. I don't know if it's the same in high school, but the graphic novel is making a huge comeback in elementary school. And so I have comic books in the classroom, and I tell the kids and I tell the parents this, and it shocks people all the time because we have accelerated reader and iStation scores and things like that, that, you know, again, it goes back to the numbers. How many points did you score? How many? And I tell them, I don't care what you're reading. I don't care if you want to go online and read articles about Minecraft all day long as you're reading, that's fine. If you want to read nothing but comic books, that's fine. And I've had students that read literally nothing but comic books and grow so much in reading. My second year, I had a parent email me within like the first week or two. She goes, I was so amazed. I've never seen my son get excited about reading before. But when he came home and said that he can read anything he wants to, including comic books, he was excited about reading, and he begs me to go to the comic book store multiple times a week. And he had never wanted to read before. And I had people who never cared about reading before, you know, and you give them that freedom to read what they want. I have tons of Star Wars books in my classroom, obviously, and it opens up that avenue. And it's like, why are we forcing these texts on these kids if they're not, you know, if they don't want to read them? And that's one thing, you know, I use Star Wars as an example, but I never force it on the kids. There's never you need to read this. It's, you know, it'll be a launching point to something else, but it's never forced on them. And it just amazes me that there are these pop culture lessons out there. They're everywhere surrounding us about how we should be questioning the way we've always done things, even if the way we've always done things is the right answer, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to change it. You can question it and then find out, oh, that was good the whole time. We'll keep doing that. It doesn't, you know.
Exactly.
There's no reason not to keep questioning.
Well, look at the Jedi as an example. Imagine if they had questioned the ways that they were following. And I'm talking before the prequels. I'm talking when the Jedi were originated and it was the ideal of what the Jedi should have been. If they had continued to question it, it would have at least kept them honest. They never questioned it, and we see what happened. They fell apart because they never questioned what they were. They never kept themselves in check. I actually had a huge revelation this last year. I was using Plot Mountain, and in the Plot Mountain, if you haven't talked about Plot Mountain in a long time, the point at the very tip of the mountain is called the climax, and it's where things are at their worst. And I realized with Anakin, we were looking particularly at Anakin over the whole saga, the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker. And the climax for him is when he allowed himself to be controlled by his emotions. And it evolved into this whole conversation about like using your emotions and having emotions and feeling your emotions and allowing them to control you and how that can lead you down a dangerous path. It's the difference between having the emotions and being controlled by them. And I think that's where both the Jedi and Sith got lost. The Sith are completely controlled by their emotions to the point where, you know, you look at Maul and he's nothing but an attack dog because he is nothing but anger and hate. And the Jedi tried to ignore those emotions completely. And it's trying to find that happy medium or balance, if you want to pull that term out.
Oh, snap.
I know. I'm going down dark alleys here with that word, but
or gray alleys.
Oh,
mic drop.
man. Yeah, I was gonna say I got a pin here. I don't know if the mic will pick it up, but I was gonna drop it.
But yeah, I mean, I hope that's stuff that they explore, because I think Rey is a character that can really provide a lot to that conversation, and even Kylo Ren can provide a lot to that conversation because he is a very emotional character. Like, I think that's part of the reason they had him throwing tantrums and being so, you know, what Twitter calls whiny and emo, is they're going to explore more of that side of the story. I hope, anyways.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think really post The Last Jedi, the whole the Old Republic era is probably gonna get kind of like, they've got the door shut pretty tight on that right now with the new canon. I think that's gonna get opened up, at least so we can peek into it, if nothing else.
I hope so. I think it would make a killer Netflix show. I mean, I know that's out there and people are talking about it, but I really do think you do a Daredevil style 8 episodes, 13 episodes Netflix show on there and just blow people's minds.
Yeah, I would be perfectly okay with that. I would put up no resistance to that happening.
No resistance to anything that's more Star Wars. I'm down.
Pretty much, yeah. It's hard to disagree with that. One thing I did want to mention when we were doing our Twitter DM back and forth getting this thing set up, you mentioned connecting to the feeling of Star Wars. So what did you mean by that?
It's that intangible thing that just always brings us back to Star Wars. So if you think about Star Wars, there's just an emotion and a feeling you get when you're talking Star Wars, when you're around Star Wars, that makes you feel at home. And it's about helping kids find whatever that is for them. And the biggest thing for me using Star Wars to teach is I want the kids to see how passionate I am about something, and encourage them by example to find that passion in their own life. And there's so many angles that you can look at Star Wars from to help kids see that. You know, there's storytelling, there's certain characters. That's a big one. What amazes me every year, and it amazes me not because of how great Leia is. It amazes me just because it's not expected by social norms, but the boys connect to Princess Leia so much. It's so cool to see because I love Leia so much. How can you not? But it's so cool to see that. But it's the feeling of hope, really, that it comes down to. The hope in Star Wars is something so important. I work in Title I districts, which, for those of you who are listening who don't know, those are the very low-income areas. I work in areas that are really bad parts of town. And these kids need someone to look up to. And unfortunately, their parents are not always the people to look up to. Their siblings are not always the people to look up to. And they need those characters to look up to. They need, whether it's Star Wars or something else, but I think the characters in Star Wars provide that. You know, the strong females, the young hopefuls, the people who have followed the dark paths and haven't made good choices, who are able to redeem themselves. It's that intangible thing that Star Wars brings that provides hope, but also encourages you to create. I mean, it's why we're here right now. Star Wars encourages you to create. It's why I'm able to do Clashing Sabers, and you guys are able to do this podcast, and there's fan films and musicians doing Star Wars music. It allows you to create. It allows you to find an avenue to express yourself, and it encourages you to find that, whether it's in Star Wars or somewhere else. And I think that's the feeling that I'm trying to get. I hope that I didn't go too ranty and tangenty on that.
No, it's good.
Brian, you always connect with this. You talk about how growing up where we grew up in the middle of nowhere, you really connected with Luke.
Right, yeah, because it gives you that idea that, I don't know, when how do I want to say this? Yeah, basically, we grew up in the middle of nowhere, and you kind of get that feeling like you're stuck in the middle of nowhere.
Forever.
Yeah, and then you see like this other character who was also stuck in the middle of nowhere, then he goes on to do great things. And you're like, oh, heck, I can do great things.
Yeah.
And I like what you said about giving, like, let's say less than privileged kids, role models, because you're right. A lot of them don't have anything. And what they're getting is sports figures who, I mean, I'm sorry, but some of them are not people you should look up to. And then like the Kardashians and things like that. Like a lot of
pop culture isn't always the best thing to idolize or aspire to.
Yeah,
I agree.
Exactly.
I agree. And it's what's great about Star Wars is there are so many different characters. There's such a diversity of characters. So like for me personally, like you guys were talking about relating to Luke, I related a lot to Darth Vader because I've had times in my life where and I've talked about it on a recent episode of the HolonetPodcast. If you guys want to jump over and listen to that, I won't go through the whole story, but basically a lot of mental health problems that led me to some bad decision making. And really I felt like, why would anybody care about me? Why would anybody, want to invest in me? And then I looked at the story of Darth Vader more and I was like, I can come out of this and I can do good. And, that's what I'm trying to do now. And the character of Ahsoka is my favorite character now because I relate to her and trying to go off and build your own path, even when it doesn't seem like the safe bets. Again, what I'm trying to do now in my life. And so there's different characters that you can relate to at different points in your life, depending on what you're going through and things like that. And I like providing that for the kids because they're going to go through, like we all do, so many ups and downs in their life. And at the base level, if you look at just the base level that kids need, they need strong role models to look up to. The boys need the strong male role models, but they also need to know what a strong female looks like. And, the girls need somebody to look up to, and they need to know, what a strong male should look like to grow up to, or whoever you decide to grow up and marry and start a life with, whether it's male or female or whatever. It's about knowing what a good person is and who you should try to surround yourself with.
Yeah, I always wanted to grow up and marry a Twi'lek, but never.
Oh, come on.
Just kidding.
Come on.
I'm sorry.
Hey.
Brian.
Shelby gets annoyed at the scantily clad Twi'lek Tuesday tweets. So that was a direct
jab.
Yeah, there you go. Jab. That's a good way.
Thanks,
to
Brian.
If you're gonna go interspecies, you could do worse.
True, like Hut, for example.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Oh, nope. I don't like that.
Nice noodles.
Oh, that.
Yeah, exactly. See, so now you can stop complaining about the Twi'lek.
Yeah. And now I'm sorry. Oh, but yeah, one thing you did mention about the, little boys connecting with Leia and stuff. I have a funny story about I think she was a fourth grader. She decided that she was Darth Vader, and then she told me that I was playing Princess Leia.
Nice.
Yeah, so, like, I'm a big dude, too. I'm, like, 6'3", 220. I'm a large person. And this girl was tiny. So she is looking at me and going, I'm Darth Vader. You're Princess Leia. And I was like, all right, I can run with this.
It's all about having confidence in it.
Yeah, and it was funny because it was during recess, and, she led me around because I was her prisoner, because that's how the movie goes. And then every once in a while, she would turn around and give me the force choke, and I had to pretend like I was choking. And,
that's great.
yeah, it was probably one of the best recesses ever.
Fantastic.
But I like that. And she had no qualms. Like, she wasn't like, you're the boy Princess Leia. She was like, no, you're Princess Leia. And I was like, all right, I got you. I can do this. So I appreciate that whole sort of lack of caring about gender. I like that that's a thing that's happening.
Well, and I think it's a thing that needs to happen. I mean, Forces of Destiny just came out recently, and there's been a lot of talk about, female representation in Star Wars, and I think that's important. I think it is essential to have males and females represented, but I'm hoping that it gets to the point where we're not even talking about it, because I think what's great about the characters is that they're the everyman. Like, I relate to most of the female characters like Rey and Ahsoka. Like, I wear a Rey, Ahsoka, or Princess Leia shirt probably 5 out of 7 days of the week. Like, like when we were watching Rebels and Ahsoka came on the screen, I had 25 kids just simultaneously turn their head and go, oh, it's Ahsoka! They'd never even seen Ahsoka before. We'd never read anything about Ahsoka. They just knew I loved Ahsoka. So, but I'm hoping it gets to that point where it's completely irrelevant for us to even talk about that kind of thing. Because Luke Skywalker, you make Luke Skywalker a girl, the story doesn't change at all. You make Rey a guy, and the story doesn't change at all. And I think that's important, because it shouldn't matter whether it's a male, a female, an alien, or anything. It's about the person that they are and the character that they have. And I think that what's great about Star Wars is it's not only just teaching kids in the classroom, but it's something that can teach our society. You know, we're at this weird spot, and I'm not going to get political or anything like that because I'm not smart enough to do that. But we are at this, it feels like, you know, we're at this crossroads where everything's burning, it seems like. You know, if you go on social media, everything's burning. Doesn't matter what hashtag you look up. Everybody's going down. The apocalypse is coming. But Star Wars, again, provides that hope in those characters that we can look to and see who we should become.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so interesting too, you know, a lot of times, I mean, I know that a lot of what we've been talking about is more language arts, history, that sort of thing. But, you know, when you get into higher level science and math, you actually finally get to that point where there really isn't one specific answer. And that gets into a lot of that complex thought of, you know, identifying your assumptions, saying where you got this data and understanding the reliability of it. What's the probability that it's between these ranges and that sort of thing. And, you know, I really appreciate what Star Wars can contribute to that, the different ways that you can think about things. And whenever you have to completely flip an idea on its head, whenever you say, okay, to make this actually work in the real world, what would have to be different? Yes, it's a movie, but, you know, so much of science is inspired by science fiction.
Oh, yeah.
And so many people are inspired to go into science because of science fiction. And I'm not saying, you know, Star Wars is science fiction, but there's so many. It is a little.
There's aspects of it, yeah. And I mean, look at the technology we have now. I mean, we have watches that
we have data pads.
Yeah, we do, and it's common to have data pads. And we have watches that we can talk into, you know. It goes back to whether it's the science or literature or history. It's about having that questioning mentality, about always asking why. It's so funny because I've realized that our culture does not like us asking why. Because when I ask my students why, I ask them why about everything. And it takes literally till the end of the school year where they realize that me asking them why is not me telling them that they're wrong.
You right, know? Exactly. Yeah. That's a really good point.
And Star Wars is, look at Luke. Star Wars is all about asking why. Luke constantly, whether he says it out loud or not, is asking, why are they having me do this? Why do they think killing Vader is the only way? Why do they think saving my friends is not the right thing to do?
Why can't I go to Tashi Station, pick up some power converters?
See, higher level, lower level thinking, it's all there. It's all there. But it's about asking that why, you know, and it's that which has led us to having data pads and also at the same time having movies that are making billions of dollars. Like, we're living in an unprecedented time, you know, and it's because people have been out there questioning why, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Star Wars has been along for the ride.
I agree. And speaking of time, we've just about run out of it.
Time's up. I gotta go to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters anyways, so we're good.
Nice.
Awesome. We will talk to you soon. Where can people find you?
You can find my writings on my website, clashingsabers.net. I have a lot of cool guys and gals writing on there about some really fun stuff. We don't really look at the news. We look at the deeper side of Star Wars, analyze it and overanalyze it. So that's a place where I'm most active. I'm on Twitter at Clashing Sabers and also at Brandon M. Boylan. On the HolonetPodcast. I'm hanging out in the Holonet Facebook group. Basically, if there's Star Wars out there, I'm trying to be there. So tweet at me. Come hang out in the Holonet Facebook group. If you want more info, just, message me.
Cool.
Sounds good.
And as always, you can find us on Twitter, hyperspace_pod, or email us, hyperspacepodblast@gmail.com. We're on Instagram too.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we are.
That's about it.
That's what we do.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Brandon. We really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Take it easy, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Peace.